Hey guys, Corey Smith here, CoreFX. It's Sunday, August 6th. Just doing the pre-week market analysis video that I started doing last week. I'm going to bring them to you guys every Sunday before the markets open. Do a quick little review of the week before. Um, what happened fundamentally, technically, what's going on around the world, as well as covering this week's fundamental news and technical setups I'll be looking at, and basically just what to look for to get the week started. So starting here with last week, as you can see, going to the strength and weakness tool with FinViz site. That's what I use right here to see which currency pairs are strong and weak. As you can see last week, the CAD, New Zealand, Pound were the three weakest performers for the week. And you got the Euro, Yen, and Dollar as the three strongest. Basically, it's just a chart to show you which currencies, not pairs, matchups, or anything, but which currencies performed better or worse last week. Um, just like anything else in trading and technical analysis and all, the only real tool we have to predict future price and future movements and what's going to happen in the future is going to be what's happened in the past. So what's been strong recently it typically tends to be strong in the future, and vice versa with weak. So basing off of what last week and for the month has been going on with pairs, we use that to determine what is likely to happen this coming week. So that being said, here's last week's results. Now, as we go to the news from last week, I covered last week before the week started what was going to be going on. Now I'll just go over quickly what happened. Chinese numbers came out pretty much on par with expectations, which is good. Good thing for the economy, and as I said last week, that China is a really big economy, and what's going on there, since it's one of the biggest in the world, affects the equities and the risk-on environment across the rest of the world, and correlates into the FX markets pretty big. And you can see they had PMI numbers that beat expectations on Monday. So numbers out of China are continuing to be good. Good signs. Means the biggest economy in the world is growing, which is good for the rest of the world as well. First major event we had was the RBA rate statement. They kept the cash rate at 1.5%, which is very significantly low for Australia. But with since the recession, the low growth environment the world's been seeing, rates have been low all across the world. So they left rates unchanged, and there was initial weakness in the Aussie afterwards as the Reserve Bank was slightly dovish, but Australian dollar recovered its losses and ended the week somewhat flat. After that, we had New Zealand dollar. They had an employment rate, and the unemployment rate was 4.8%, on par with expectations, but the employment change was worse than expected, and the New Zealand dollar took a hit from that. That kind of fueled the weakness out of the New Zealand dollar. They have this upcoming week, their central bank meets, the Reserve Bank of New Zealand, and they meet 8 times a year. I'll go over that in a minute, but basically there's been continuing stagnant signs out of New Zealand's economy. So the more numbers like this continue to come out, missing expectations, the weaker and weaker the New Zealand dollar is going to be. So this has showed some weakness last week in New Zealand. U.S. crude inventories, as we saw last week, didn't really have too much of an effect. It was a little better than they expected, higher inventories. But that wasn't something we were watching, as it affects the CAD pretty strongly. Australia had a negative trade balance. Again, New Zealand, Australia, very similar economies, and they've both been showing stagnation in their numbers. So this is a very data-driven field with Forex and the central banks. So these numbers need to pick up if we're going to see any kind of appreciation out of there. The pound had about expectations for the PMI, and then they had their central bank meeting. They left rates unchanged. This led to the pound being pretty weak Thursday, and we saw a sell-off in the pound pretty much across the board. Covered it a little bit, but not too much. Pound was one of the weakest currencies of the week because of it. The Bank of England, which is the central bank for the UK and pound, they were very dovish. They weren't hinting at any possible rate hikes being thought of any faster than we were planning, so this led to a weakness in the pound. And then as we move on to Australian Reserve Bank, they had their policy statement on Thursday, and then retail sales was better than expected. This kind of helped them recover the losses they saw earlier in the week as well. And then Friday led us to NFP. We had the Canadian dollar weaken off the numbers as the employment change was worse than expected. Unemployment rate went down a little bit, but the trade balance and unemployment change was worse than expected. Um, and then the dollar, we saw a turnaround in the dollar finally on Friday as NFP numbers beat expectations pretty good. The hourly earnings right here is what's really been watched lately. As you can see, our unemployment rate is below what's considered full employment of 5%, so it's been great. And we can see we created 209,000 new jobs in July, which is a great number as well, but this has been struggling. The average earnings, as you can see, it's been missing expectations, and it's been around 0.2%. We wanted at least zero point 0.3, and we had the zero point 0.3 on par, so that's a good sign. We've been missing this number pretty much, and earnings growth has been very stagnant, which needs to catch up to the low unemployment rate. But the dollar saw a little bit of a turnaround here last week. I'm going to now switch to this upcoming week. Beginning tonight, New Zealand dollar. They have their inflation expectations. Basically, this is consumers and stuff being surveyed and their outlook of what they think inflation is going to be in the next 2 years. Um, what this does basically is it just gives a gauge of the sentiment, and if there's more sentiment of people thinking there's going to be higher inflation, then it typically leads to that just because of consumers' actions and stuff based around that. But this is something that isn't too significant, but could cause some move in the New Zealand dollar. Um, and then we have the Swiss francs got CPI numbers Monday, early AM, late tonight, and then we have some more decent numbers out of China. We got their trade balance. They're a huge exporting manufacturing country, so that this is something big that affects their numbers. And then you've got their inflation numbers, which is the CPI and the PPI, which we'll be watching for Tuesday as well. Nothing crazy going on here, but this could kind of set the trend for the week for risk on or risk off environment and what equities are going to be doing, things like that. Then again, Wednesday we've got the crude inventory levels like we do every Wednesday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time out of the U.S. This affects the CAD. And then the main event, first big event of the week, and the main event really of the week is going to be the New Zealand dollars um, central bank meeting. Their rate statement. They're expected to keep rates at 1.75%. Again, this is really low for New Zealand, but like I was saying, there's been not the greatest numbers reported on New Zealand. There's no inflation to worry about. Growth is kind of stagnant. Um, so we got to wait to see how the central bank words things. If they hiked rates, it would be totally unexpected. That's the kind of event that could cause huge moves, but they're not expected to. So we're not gonna. We're just gonna be looking for how they word it, um, and pretty much see where they go from there. They were dovish last meeting in June. They meet 8 times a year to go over policy statement, the rate statement. So we'll see. I'm expecting it to be a little bit dovish as well because the job numbers were weak and inflation numbers were weak over the past month since they met in June. So they haven't gotten any good data to change their dovish outlook. So there's nothing really going on positive for them. So I'm expecting either dovish comments to weaken the New Zealand dollar more, or maybe a little bit of a stagnant move or a little bit of an upside if they're a little more hawkish. But I'll be looking dovish on that. Then you got Thursday. The pound has manufacturing production numbers month over month. Basically, just shows how their manufacturing is doing in Great Britain. Their trade balance, and then we've got the U.S. dollars. Got some PPI numbers. Again, inflation is the huge thing that central banks are looking at, and these numbers are big to watch for. The Australian dollar, Governor Lowe speaks. Typically, a random meeting speaking like this, not around a bank meeting or anything, isn't that big of a deal. But could be an unexpected wording or something that sends some movement into the Australian dollar. And then on Friday, we've got the CPI and core CPI numbers out of the U.S., which is, again, the biggest inflation gauge we have. Consumer Price Index, this tells us what the central bank's going to be looking to do with interest rates and all that down the road. So this will be another big thing to watch for as far as news goes this week. But it's not too crazy of a week. You know, New Zealand dollar should be a good event to trade around. Some of these inflation reports might be 30, 40 pip moves to try to take advantage of, but all in all, it should be a slower week. It's now into August, which in all of the financial markets is a very slow time of the year. Forex is not as bad because there's constant liquidity and there's always something going on somewhere in the world, but for the most part, this is the slowest time of the year for trading. So, nothing crazy. Just looking for some perfect setups, not rushing into any trades, and we'll see how this week goes. But now switching over to the charts. New Zealand dollar, US dollar is a setup I got in last week. If you see my Instagram account, you would know that core.fx. But you can see right here when this new lower low was made and the lower high was established. I entered on the news announcement NFP, but you can see this retest up here of this broken support, turn resistance, and you can see this bearish engulfing candle. I entered it around in here, and the initial target was down at the prior low, which was hit. Half my position taken out. The rest I'm going to trail and see if I can get a new lower low made and continue this trend reversal here. As you can see, this trend line was broken, set new lower lows and lower highs, and we're looking at a little bit of a reversal here. But that's just the trade I was in last week. As far as what I'm going to be looking at this week, if we switch over to the Dixie, these are the indexes basically. It's the dollar against a basket of currencies, so it shows the overall sentiment of the U.S. dollar, strength and weakness of the U.S. dollar. And as you can see, the dollar has been extremely weak. Switching it to the weekly chart, a little bit of a higher time frame view. You see we were in this choppy market all through 2015 and 16, and then with the Trump rally, starting back in November, the dollar got very strong, came up, topped out up here right below 104, and then began to fall off, and has since then gone back into this range and fallen off pretty hard. Now you can see it's at the bottom of this range, which is an extremely strong support level. Price through a doji candle, a pin bar candle here, the 200 SMA at the support. This is a very bullish sign, but basically just shows that this bearish trend has met some resistance here and some support here, and some buyers have stepped into the market and pushed price back up. So the dollar is at a very key inflection point here. What we can expect to see is maybe a little bit more of a bounce upwards to potentially somewhere in here, or maybe even as far back as up here. This would be kind of testing a reversal, but we could see a slight retracement of the dollar this week and then continue to the downside and see if we can test this bottom again, possibly break out and continue the downtrend. If this bottom gets broken, expect the dollar to fall pretty hard. Very key level here, and there's a lot of eyes watching it. I'm not expecting it to just bust right through. It's going to take something significant, but as the U.S. stock market's doing better. But other than that, there's nothing real significant in the numbers anywhere's picking up to make the Fed want to rush into hiking rates again, or anything too bullish for the dollar. So overall, I am still bearish the dollar. And then we look at the Aussie dollar. This is the Aussie dollar chart. You can see price has been on an extremely strong uptrend here. It's hit resistance in the 200 SMA on the weekly as well. You can see this support, broken resistance, resistance. It is hitting this 200 SMA and retracing a little. But again, with all how strong it's been, I expect it to continue higher. As you can see, we've got price making a high base here on the daily chart. And I know these lines are sloppy. I'm just trying to show you. We got a little bit of a high base here. We had this bullish candlestick pattern here of this hammer on support. So to me, I'll be looking for the Aussie to potentially continue higher this week. Moving on to the pound, we're in an uptrend on the weekly and the daily. It's back up into the 2016 post-Brexit range that it was in. As you can see here, we had Brexit hit a bottom and chopped around in here for a while. Looks a little cleaner on the daily chart. Chopped around here a little while and then broke lower again and then was range bound down here, and we've managed to come back up into this range. And price is making higher highs and higher lows. Came down, hit the 20 SMA, made a higher low here. We can expect the pound to potentially go back up to retest the high and continue the uptrend. Also, if this comes down, reverses, and breaks this area here, we could see a potential trend reversal. And moving on to the CAD. Similar look with the CAD. See, we've got a strong uptrend the past several months, weeks. Came up, hit this very strong resistance level here. Hasn't hit, it's the high since April of 16, so over a year. And we see this bearish engulfing candle off of it. But again, strong uptrend. Testing the low here in a high base. Could see it bounce back up to the high, see if we can continue the uptrend. Or it could roll over and reverse trends here. But again, another critical level. On to the euro, similar story across the board here. We've got the euro in a strong uptrend, has now come up, hit this strong resistance, shooting star candle, almost tapped the 200 SMA at the top of this zone here. So we could see a retracement of the euro before continuing higher, or it could just continue higher. Or again, we could see on the daily price roll over further and reverse trends here. But I'm looking for confirmation either way, but well, my expectation would be a little bit more of a retracement, maybe to around 113, and then a continue higher. And then I'm going to skip the franc and the New Zealand. I'm just going to cover the yen. The yen, as you can see, has been somewhat choppy. This looks pretty similar to the dollar-yen chart. You can see longer term, it is making a lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high. We could expect the yen to potentially come down here, but it's not really clean lower lows and lower highs. It's kind of choppy, range boundish. You can see price broke through all of the SMAs here. Now the SMAs are turning upwards. Looks like they're going to cross soon. We had the hammer candle here on the daily on support, so we could see a continuation of the upside. A lot of these charts are in very critical levels where price could really go either direction, as it can any given day. But we just want to watch and wait for some confirmation. If price breaks this high here, it's going to be bullish for sure. That's where my expectations are going to be. And if it comes down and breaks under here again, then I'll be looking for a reversal and some bearish pressure coming out of the yen. But all in all, this is just some stuff to keep an eye on and to look for to begin the week. These indexes are a great thing to always keep an eye on to get an overall view of what the currencies are doing. Couple interesting pairs I wanted to pick out real quick here. The dollar CAD, as you can see, was in a nice little uptrend. Price fell off hard and now has hit this very strong weekly level here. It's also a strong weekly trend line. It's also the 20 SMA to 200 SMA. We had a bullish engulfing off of it as the dollar reversed last week and the CAD was weaker. You can see now on the daily chart we had a very strong downtrend, impulse consolidation, all the way. Then we had a strong impulse move down here. This looks like could be a little bit of exhaustion as these candles are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Price hit this support level and trend line, bounced up higher, and has now moved up to here. We could see it hit around 128 and reverse and continue the downtrend, or we could see it slowly start making higher highs and higher lows and reverse this trend here. Either way, this is a very interesting chart we got here with the CAD dollar. Another one here is the Aussie dollar. It's been in an uptrend as well, as the Aussie has been. And you can see it came up and tapped this 200 SMA, pulled back a little bit as it's the same as this key weekly area here, support and resistance. Now acting as resistance. But if you switch to the daily chart, it's a strong uptrend on weekly and daily. And if you go to the daily chart, you can see all the SMAs are pointing in the direction we'd like. Price is above them all. And we got, again, a little high base here. It's nothing really nice and clean. We got wicks on either end, so you can see there's an equilibrium here, and buyers and sellers are struggling to take control. But until the Aussie dollar breaks below here, this 0.7890 area, until it breaks this support, I'm going to be looking to see price make a new higher high, get in on a retracement. But there's a couple of just interesting charts I'm looking at. The dollar euros kind of in the same situation. As you can see here, price has come up, set a new high, new high, new high, and then off of NFP last week, sharply sold off, but has now came back down to this strong level here, broke this 4-hour trend line, but as you can see, is at a strong level here, so it can either come up, retest this trend line, bounce, set a new low, reverse trend, or we could see it come back up to this new high. I'll be waiting for it to set a new higher high off of this retest and then get back on long as the retest comes down to retest the broken resistance, now turn support. But that's about it for this week. That's what I'm looking at. My students will be getting my watch list live and the trades I'll be taking, as well as the trades I'm in currently. Check out my Instagram at core.fx, my website corefxtrading.com. See if you want to join the team, get some training in. Otherwise, stay tuned to these videos. They'll be coming out every Sunday. Give you an idea what's going on in the market, what to watch for. And thank you guys very much. Appreciate you taking the time to watch these. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know how you like it. And I'll keep the videos coming. Thanks, guys.